The money was mentioned to his increase believed to be greater than the amount of last year's major sponsorship. American centre Howard Levy arrived overnight and is so tall he left Mascot Airport with his head projecting from the sunroof of millionaire owner Basil Seller's Mercedes. It's a bit of a local joke here that Americans suffer from what we call Pan-Pacific shrinking disease, that when they get off the plane they're not quite the height that we expect them to be. But you are certainly the height we expected you to be.
Well, I think a lot of that's because I dealt directly with the team without an agent, so I knew, you know, I had no reason to tell them anything different.
Right. And, of course, you play centre, and your background in the game?
Well, I graduated from Princeton University in June. I played there for 4 years. And then last summer I went over to Israel to play in the Maccabi games. And then I got back and I tried out for the New Jersey Nets of the NBA. And I was with them for about a month. And then for the last about 3 or 4 months I've been playing for Albany, New York, of the Continental League, which is like a minor league for the NBA.
Still very high standard.
Yeah, there's a lot of good players in the league. A lot of players go up to the NBA. So it was pretty good competition.
That's right.
Adam Cable was born with sudden orphan death syndrome. During his 3 years, he's been in and out of hospital, both in Newcastle and Sydney, at a time spent longer in hospital than at home. He's had a windpipe operation, a heart operation, contracted pneumonia, stopped breathing, a stomach operation and an ear operation, extreme bouts of vomiting, and lately has been subject to fits, and again has been diagnosed with apnea, which means he stops breathing when asleep. The Lions covered Morris have recently bought a motion monitor for the family, which sits permanently in Adam's room. It monitors his breathing, and when he stops breathing...
Before we had the motion monitor, we had to sit up for night and watch him, so he didn't stop breathing, you know. But now we've got it has an alarm that goes off and it wakes us up. We just run into his room.
Has it all been worth it?
Oh, yes. I hate to lose him.
There must have been a lot of sleepless nights, though.
Yes. We can't have any more children.
Although Adam's been through so much already, his battles are not yet over. He goes to Sydney on the 24th of March for yet more tests.
We're good fishing.
Called the Walk of the Way of the Cross, it's been happening on this hillside at Lochinvar for the past 20 years. Christians coming together from throughout the Hunter Valley, as well as from Sydney, on the 5th Sunday of Lent to prepare for the Easter week. The 2,500 to 3,000 who participated this afternoon enjoyed beautiful autumn weather. They were welcomed at the first of 12 stations by Father Terry Curtis from Wallsend, who spoke about the walk and the Easter week of celebration. A 4-metre by 2-metre painting of Christ accepting the chalice was on display. Silence was observed as the pilgrims walked between each station, and at each stop a homily was given. Bishops Clark and Appleby gave the farewell address, speaking again of the importance of Easter. For those that attend this annual ritual, the Walk of the Way of the Cross is a very important part of the Christian year, and one that after 20 years seems destined to be continued for decades yet.
Is our way to life.
In the Lower Hunter, the target stands at $56,500, an amount which will allow existing services to be maintained and new services to be introduced. To that end, volunteers pounded the footpaths yesterday to knock on doors with this request.
Hi, I'm from the Red Cross. Would you like to make a donation for the door knock appeal?
Okay. While the diligence of collectors could not be faulted, according to appeal chairman Vince Sinclair, the number of volunteers was down.
We were promised around about 3,000 volunteers, but being such a nice day, a lot of those didn't turn up. But those that did turn up worked very hard, and those door knocks that they did a call on, then those people gave very generously, and the amount of money so far is we're very happy with.
How will the appeal be conducted during the week?
Well, during the week, the people who did not have a call on them today, or were out, then we would like those people to donate to any Commonwealth Bank or drop the money in here to Red Cross any time during office hours.
In its 10th year, the Toronto Trade Fair attracted a record 350 exhibits, many of which were concerned with entertaining the thousands of people who flocked to Rathmines Park for the two-day event. One of the biggest drawcards was this hot air balloon, which competed with a compact glider for the attention of flying enthusiasts. Products worth $4 million, including furnishings, pools and spas, were also on display. This year's Toronto Trade Fair reflected the character of the region, not only in its exhibits, but in yesterday's National Rock Bolting competition, a sport appropriate to this coal mining area. The simulation is of men drilling into the roof of a mine and placing bolts in the roof to keep loose rock in place. In yesterday's competition, the aim was to fix 3 bolts in concrete in as fast a time as possible. Although 32 two-man teams entered from coal mining regions from throughout the state, the local teams excelled. The overall winner was the team from Myuna Colliery, who drove the bolts home first by a comfortable margin.
You may be surprised to learn that baseball was in fact one of the first sports played in this state's schools. Today, 120 high school students took to the turf at the Tube Makers Ovals in the Inter-Regional Championship. 8 teams, one from each of the state's education regions, are competing in the round-robin competition, which will decide the state's champion high school baseball team. 4 teams are from the Sydney area, including the current champions Metropolitan West in the blue and yellow, seen here playing North Coast. The other 4 are from the state's country regions and includes the Hunter team. Most of the players have representative experience for the state, and several coaches are themselves Australian players. The championship winds up on Thursday. The inaugural Hunter Challenge Bowls tournament pits our top bowlers against the best bowlers Australia-wide. It's replacing the International Pairs tournament, and fittingly the reigning International Pairs champions, Newcastle's Barry Salter and Darby Ross, are among the field at Lambton. But the talent doesn't stop there. In fact, the field is close to the turnout for an Australian Pairs Championship. The 8 local pairs, 4 from Newcastle and 1 each from the Manning, the Central Coast, the Hunter and the Upper Hunter, are up against pairs from each state, as well as the ACT and the Northern Territory. All state pairs were selected by their state as the state representative, and most bowlers are currently members of their state side. As well as most of the country's top men's pairs, a ladies' invitation challenge featuring the top women bowlers is being run concurrently. Among that field is world singles champion Merle Richardson, along with Faye Craig, Eve Wiltshire and Dorothy Roach. The tournament culminates with the final on the weekend, and you'll be able to see all the action right here on NBN from 12 o'clock on Saturday and 1 o'clock on Sunday.
Although goats have been around since the year dot, it's only recently that they've become a familiar feature of the hunter's landscape, as more and more people see them as an alternative to more traditional grazing operations. At Finnan Park, an 80-hectare property at Seaham, there's now a dairy goat herd which could become one of the biggest in the state. At the moment there are 40 milking does and another 60 dry does are scattered around the state, being readied for transport to the property. When they arrive in kid, they'll become very familiar with Lorraine Hammond and Faye Clark, who for the last 6 weeks have been operating the dairy in partnership with their husbands. The dairy itself is unique, a dual-sided walk-through herringbone bales, for all intents and purposes the same as a cow bales, just scaled down and elevated. The milk flows into refrigerated vats and is then bottled. But although sales at the moment aren't staggering, the Clarks and Hammonds are hoping they'll grow. Dairy goats such as these are very efficient converters of grass into milk. In fact, they're probably better at the job than cows. The milk they produce, though, is slightly different to cow's milk. It has a different nutritional value. It has known medical qualities that cow's milk doesn't have. And yet, goat's milk isn't half as popular as cow's milk. If we lived in Mediterranean or Middle East countries, goat's milk would be a staple part of our diet. But not so in Australia. And that's probably one of the biggest problems facing the dairy goat farmer these days. With little promotion of the product and marketing left up to the individual producer, the success of Finnan Park seems to depend on people at least giving their goat's milk a taste test.
A lot of people think that because it has such high nutritional value, it should taste slightly off. Now, that is not the case. The milk we're producing here and the milk produced by reliable and reputable producers, for all the world, tastes exactly the same as cow's milk.
According to both Paul and his partner Greg Hammond, apart from ensuring a top quality product, the other big problem is maintaining a consistent supply. They hope they won't be like hundreds of others who've entered the goat milk industry, found and developed a market, and then failed to keep up to the demand.
The setup we've got here, the machinery we've got, is probably the biggest of its kind in New South Wales, at least maybe Australia. The tenor-side herringbone, we could milk up to 200 goats at a milking if we had the market to do it. But also we've had a lot of good advice from the Department of Agriculture, from Bob Lewis at Mount Hutton, who we bought a lot of gear from, and from Marge Bollinger at Orange, who are established goat experts. We've already started an artificial or a system of sponging that brings the goats into season, out of season, and we have goats on the property now who will be kidding in May, June, July and August, the traditional times when normal producers lose their milk because the goats are kidding and drying off.
His works depict nearly a century of history. Born in 1898, Robert Emerson Curtis arrived in Australia from England in 1914. Beginning his career as a cartoonist, his talents soon turned to greater challenges when he arrived in Newcastle in 1935, commissioned to record drawings of BHP. But the artist also found time to make an historic account of the life around him.
All I think I'm trying to express is what I saw, which is conditions that people were living in and doing at the time. Some of the old streets fascinated me, and I used to sketch the old streets when I could. You know, the hilly streets, the life, the old men walking up Wolf Street, which was not then a traffic way. It was paved, cobblestone, with benches and trees.
Described as an industrial artist, Curtis was inspired by the construction of the Sydney Harbour Bridge and was later commissioned to make yet another historic account, this time of the Sydney Opera House. His work has since been compiled and published.
Industry has played a great part in what I do because of the enjoyment I have in seeing something being created, a building or a bridge or some work that might be taking place at a mine or in any form of industrial activity where men are at work and doing things. This is what has always appealed to me.
The exhibition will be on show until the 6th of next month.
'It was the last thing motorists at the bank corner in Hunter Street needed on a Friday afternoon, a delay in getting home. But police were forced to block the road after the silver Ford sedan was put out of action. 18-year-old Zapantis Christo was driving his dad's car west down Hunter Street when a white Toyota Corolla changed lanes. Christo veered to get out of the way, but cut down a set of traffic lights in the process. He was unhurt, but the offending driver had left the scene before police arrived. Police are hoping someone may have identified the driver or the car and helped them with their inquiries.
Aviation accidents are caused by pilot error. All over the world, airlines and aviation authorities are looking for ways to better control the human factor. In Australia, Associate Professor Ross Telfer and Dr. Adrian Ashman are leading the search. Their education program using slides, videos and hands-on instruction has just received a $9,000 6-month grant from the Department of Aviation. The money comes on the heels of a similar grant from the department last year, and will allow the team to make training materials available to air schools throughout Australia.
Well, the demand probably comes from the fact that most of the aviation accidents that occur in general aviation are a result of human error. So the Department of Aviation and researchers around the world are essentially trying to cut down the number of accidents that are found in general aviation, and the best way we can do that is to try and start getting at the pilots.
Dr. Ashman and Professor Telfer began their research in 1983, drawing on preliminary studies in the United States in the late 70s. While further research in the States and in Canada is showing promising results, the Newcastle team has more conclusive evidence that changing pilot attitudes reduces the risk of accidents. They say an impulsive or macho personality, for example, is more likely to make mistakes. The program teaches the pilot to recognise these things, refine his decision-making process and control stress. About 50 local pilots have shown a marked improvement because of the training, and the program seems to have a promising future.
Future for the program looks pretty good. We've had some good successes up to the moment, and what we're hoping we'll be able to do is to continue our work over the next few years and gradually refine the material, gradually refine the techniques that we're using, and trying to get more people involved in pilot judgment training across Australia.
Wonderful.
The project will be run in the old infant school in Stockton Street and will involve courses on communication, self-esteem and study skills. A spokesperson for the outreach program at the TAFE College, Julia Robertson, says the Tomaree Peninsula has a high percentage of women who are unemployed, either by choice or circumstance, and it's these people who it's hoped will eventually take on an external TAFE course.
Looking at maybe a population of women that spend most of their time at home looking after their little ones, and to then take on an additional burden, as it were, of study and just stay inside and just study in their own four walls without any break, just doesn't sort of seem very appealing. So what we're trying to do is establish a group of women that will support one another, and they'll be able to talk to one another about sort of what's happening with them. They'll be able to help one another, and there'll also be a teacher there that will be able to sort of help them. It's quite a difficult prospect, actually.
Hello, I'm Helen Hughes. Supporters of the Glenrock State Recreation Area are angered over the condition of the park. Domestic garbage, car bodies, old fridges are being left here, they say because of charges at Redhead Dump.
Join Ray Deneen and Anna Manzoni for all the news tonight at 6.